In this new series, you get to hear stories from artists, content creators, and pick their brains on all things digital. So tune in for some fun, fresh perspectives from the online world on how to Ekla Solo Ray. Hi guys, welcome to Ekla Solo Ray. So it's a new podcast series that I'm doing, and the idea is very simple. I'll get some of my friends and content creators here to speak about their perspectives on how they go about building or creating things online, like doing their own podcast, uh, having a YouTube channel, creating any sort of content in the digital world, especially because I think in today's day, especially given the current situation globally, a lot of people are trying to find ways to express themselves through art, maybe, or through any sort of art content creation. So uh, hopefully, this gives some sort of help to upcoming artists and content creators to go about doing the things, learn from people who have already been doing that for a while now, and yeah, take some ideas and feed from each other, basically. So my first guest today is one of my closest friends from Germany, Freddie. So he's someone who has his own podcast, and he also did a couple of other projects, which was on Instagram and YouTube previously. He's someone who has really pushed me in the last 6 months to actually get this going. So I'm happy to have him as my first guest to actually speak and share his ideas, and hopefully that's something that really helps you guys. So without much ado, I'll welcome Freddie on board.
Boom!
Hello. How are you?
Very good. Good morning. Yeah, I think you are quite already starting the day. Yeah, 6 or 7 hours difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, best greetings from Paris. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Paris. Yeah. I forgot to mention that, but yeah. How's it there right now? The situation.
It is getting softer. Yeah, actually, in terms of European comparison, I think it was one of the hardest. One of the hardest countries, in compare, So no, I'm serious. The lockdown was pretty intense, but now it's slowly opening up again. Borders are opening, museums,
okay,
parks.
That's good. That's good.
Slowly but steady, indeed.
This is like a basic sharing session, sort of where you get to understand how you're doing these things. But I'll actually split it into two different parts. So for the first part would be probably Freddie, you as someone who's a podcast producer. So on a more generic level, how you actually go about doing those things, and then secondly, we talk more in detail about your actual podcast where you're talking about Africa and the different things going around the continent. So oh yeah, nice. yeah. So basically, Freddie's podcast is called Afrika for Almans. It's also it rhymes with his surname. So I think that's the idea why you chose that name, right?
No. It's actually quite political because Afrika for Almans basically means in let's say in most languages, Turkish, French also, it's Allemand is the word for Germans, and in Germany it would have been otherwise Afrika für Deutsche, and this is the right-wing party, technically. AfD would have been the right-wing party, and I chose AFA because also it's a slang word, and that's my approach a bit to make it academic, but also fresh, the content. It's a very informative based, but at the same time, I want to keep it kind of informal in terms of wording.
Okay. So we'll get to that, more details on AFA later, but how did you actually come to this idea, like speaking about Africa? Because when I knew you for the last 4-5 years now, and I mean you had nothing to do with Africa, man. Like how did this thing come about, and how did you actually stumble upon this? Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, yes. I think I've always been a very xenophile person, and I had the blessing of a great aunt who was in Africa, and I visited her when I was like 12 or 13. So it was a quite impactful time that back then in Tanzania. But you're right, I was not particularly, let's say, focused on the African continent. I mean, we also had our extended discussions, mutual Pakistani friends, etc. And I think it was technically also a project I did before that. And
I knew you were
in some
very
way I
interested.
tried out.
Sorry to break you off, but I knew you were
I tried out
particularly
and yeah, exactly. So it came about maybe in the time of 1 year or 1.5 years, and I met more people in this area, and the network showed me that it's time to get them on stage. You know.
Yeah. No, I was mentioning because back then I think you were very much part of debating, and you used to travel a lot to Turkey. So I knew your interest was a lot in Turkey. For a lot of
it is still the majority of my guests are actually African students who are studying in Turkey. That's where I met most of Turkey was somewhat of a catalyst.
Okay, I thought it's a lot to do with Josh as well. So shout out to Josh, because I thought she's also helping you connect with a lot of people from Africa as well.
That's true. Absolutely. Juanita. Yes, best greetings. She's tuning in here. I know she doesn't use Instagram that much, but maybe she gets the message.
She would. I'll tell her. Yeah. So so this came about. How long has it been that you're doing this podcast?
It's funny we speak today because yesterday I finished the first season, and my slogan has been 55 countries, 55 weeks, 55 episodes. So
yeah, 55 weeks and 55.
Basically, it's 55 weeks. Yeah. 1 year plus a few weeks. Yes.
So you completed all the countries from Africa, or?
Yes, all the countries. All countries, all 55 countries. It's a dispute, 54, 55. Some define it differently, but I thought 55 is the better number. So
but did you include South Sudan, man? Did you forget South Sudan?
I did not forget South Sudan. It's actually the newest country.
Newest, yeah, exactly.
South Sudan is in there. Everything is in there, and a few islands as well. Nobody would have known, I think.
Yeah, I think you probably, it's easy to miss those.
Mauritius, Sao Tome, Principe, Comoros. I mean, there's many places you don't associate with the mother continent somehow, but no, it's a very round picture. And of course, the problem is now, I had a very fixed structure, and this helped me a lot, you know. This was actually an approach why I did that's something I really enjoyed about it, that I gave myself a certain schedule every week, and I knew somehow what is going to happen next, what's going to happen next, because many formats, I think, otherwise, especially when it's like something that is very, very work requiring, you know, because in many episodes I had to do it myself. Of course, I had many interview guests, but most of the time also I had to make all the material and content myself, research myself. And then it helps if you have a very clear structure, you know, you can postpone things, you can do things in advance. And somehow, therefore, I managed to.
I think you brought up a very good point, because having a structure is very important, and I'll probably learn that or not learn that very soon. So having a structure is very key, and also I think it really helps because you actually have to cover one country one after the other. So now that it's great that congratulations, you completed like the first whole year in a way. So I think you completed a year, right? Because it took you probably 55 weeks.
Yes. Beginning of May 2019. We met actually after, I think, 10 weeks or something, right? You remember?
We met in August. Yeah. So I remember you walking in the park and, you know, jotting down your things. So it's great.
Exactly.
But how do you actually go about this?
Like, there was no internet connection at the flat.
And like, is there?
Okay, I think I got inspired by a few. Yeah, sorry. The connection has like a 1 second delay, so I always have to be careful that I don't speak into your moderation.
Okay. No. Well, my question is, how do you actually go about, you know, doing this on a week-to-week basis? Like, what is the motivation, and is there like some sort of a what's the word, like, is there an end goal that you see? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, trying to create an awareness, or what is it?
Absolutely. I mean, my first motivation. Okay, let's say maybe differently. I always wanted to have another media format. I didn't know if it's a podcast, if it's something on YouTube. Of course, I had this desire, to express myself on a media platform. I did not know the way. And yeah, please go ahead. At the same time, I also knew that I had to feed my curiosity for African nation states. So I was always very interested in these topics. I enjoyed many discussions with friends from debating, as you mentioned. And I knew for so many countries, I already knew, let's say, the capital and maybe the location, which is still very rare, I think. And but for so many countries, I didn't know anything. So my goal was to use this format as a pressure mechanism for myself to get in there, to get involved myself.
To get involved. I think that's one of your taglines. I saw that. I was actually hearing your interview with Josh recently.
Yes.
The one from I think 2 days. The podcast before the last one, right? The one on Uganda. And yeah, you kept saying get involved. I know you keep saying that to me as well.
It is the phrase that needs to be heard. Like, I mean, everybody. I think people are hesitant because they think the share of audience is limited and they don't think they can compete. I think everybody has this kind of superiority feeling that the others, my format is irrelevant, whatnot. But I think we have to stop thinking about the audience as like a cake that has to be cut. It's growing. My 64-year-old mother is now digging into podcasts. There's such a big audience of people who are not on the platform yet, on the different media platforms, who can enjoy this format. So get out there, get involved.
What's your plan? Like what for your audience, for your viewers?
Yes.
What do you think they should be taking away from this? Like just getting an idea about things, how things work in Africa, or is there a more sort of a political angle to it as well?
There is absolutely. I think I see myself. I mean, always I had this fascination with diplomacy professions. With jobs in the diplomacy area, I always had a certain interest there. And
that's why.
And this podcast actually is now a tool for me to open up the Africa topic to many Germans, because also during my my travels, but more actually during my interactions with African students from different countries, I realized everybody has a certain positive opinion about Germany, even more than other European colonizing countries. But Germans are very ignorant. Here in France, for example, you see in every newspaper, large Africa sections, there's multiple podcasts out there in English extensively, BBC everywhere. It's super present. And also in terms of DIY formats, it's very present. But in Germany, I must say, unfortunately, nothing. And there is now some diaspora podcasts, like with the BPOC, like people of African heritage in Germany. But there's no such thing as like a podcast that discusses African affairs in a German way and in German for a German-speaking audience. So that was the gap I was seeing, and I thought I can't just start and make a news channel. So I should maybe first acquire the knowledge, and why not let everybody join in?
Yeah, because I think Africa is largely untapped. It's interesting because we're talking now, given Africa is a mainly black-dominated continent, right? So, given what happened recently with things in USA and so on. So it's very interesting that you bring this fresh take on what's happening in Africa and all these different countries. A lot of people, we just think of Africa as just one big country in a way. So people don't really know different cultures and so on.
It's too big. I think even many Africans, that's also what I realized. I was always asking friends to, join me for interviews on the specific countries. And many people have a hesitation because it's just this overwhelming continent, of opportunity and also in some sense, of course, of failure. And people are just, I don't know, like, inferior somehow. But that's something maybe also this can show to your audience or others. I'm just a German guy, I have no African heritage of any kind, so it is not too big. If you give it the time, if you give also rise to the right people, like if you have some interesting interview guests and have a positive, authentic way to structure it, it can be successful. And thank God, nowadays more than 2,000 people each week are tuning in, so it is slowly but steadily growing.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I'm really happy and also since you completed the first season, what's next now? Like, what do you do next? Second season is what? Like,
good question.
Waiting for Southwest Sudan or?
That's actually many people now tell me, what about Africa for Asia? You know, get in there, Bhutan,
Yeah.
Malaysia. Yeah, what's going on? No,
Malaysia.
it would be waste. I think I will do now what I actually wanted to do first, which is listening to these episodes. So first I will take off, let's say 55 days, and because most of the time I don't have the time to listen. You know, it's like you produce it
Walker
exactly.
Langda.
You produce it, but in the end, I mean, the knowledge is basically already skipped because you're thinking about next Friday, you know?
Yeah.
So
But
first dig into
Freddie, before this, you were actually working on another side project, hustle,
yes,
whatever you might call it. You were working on empathy work.
empathy work.
What's that?
That's
Give some idea. Like, what was that
yes,
about?
that I mentioned it indirectly earlier. It's kind of the path towards Afrika for Almans. It's an NGO project I did with a Namibian friend. We were aiming at building a community radio station in Namibia. But I realized during that time also, I mean, we did some YouTube videos. We went there, we talked to possible stakeholders, community leaders, whatnot. It was actually going quite well. But at some point I realized I did this without any pre-reflection, so what, you know, like I didn't have a real plan. It was always like kind of based on funding, but there was no real funding plan, and it is still out there, you know. It's not passed, it has not been substituted, let's say. But
didn't you make a business out of it? Like
I mean, we founded an NGO.
Yeah,
it was an
made
NGO,
a
so,
proper NGO around it, right? Yes.
So you got tax benefits if you gave us money, of course, in theory, yes. So it was legit in terms of the German normative framework, but
I think what really took off is the AFA, right? Because it's been there for a year, and I mean, you did this whole season now, so.
That's true. I mean, the problem was that we basically, both me and the other initiator were not in Namibia. He just moved there now yet, so let's see if something picks up again. But there was many issues. Also, the radio frequency was not. Let's say we were not prepared for the administrative workload, and also our network on the ground was not very present. So we were always from Turkey and Germany trying to get in there, but it was a quite frustrating experience until the end. And I realized for myself, first of all, you know, before I get 2 steps ahead, maybe I should start with the first step and inform myself. And this then also, I mean, I had the privilege that through this project, I already knew a very large base of friends and had a good network, and I used that also to some extent. But I knew I was going to do something in that area, but I didn't know now already if it's Namibia, if it's funding something, if it's NGO work or whatnot. And now I thought, let's go a few steps back, do what you are good at, because at debating, they always told me, stop telling stories, get to the point, debate. But now fuck these people, I'll do the stories only, and enough of that. So.
But how do you keep yourself motivated to, you know, churn out these interviews, these podcasts, one after the other? Also, because I know you were interning in Frankfurt. You had like some sort of a freelancing job in Frankfurt, and you're also studying right now. I mean, how do you juggle, because this is not a full-time thing that you're doing, right?
No. It is, but to be honest, it is a part-time job technically. Yeah, I mean, depending on if I have to do it myself, it can be a 20 hours a week based on the podcast. Of course, if there's an interview guest, it will reduce. But for sure, it's a part-time job. And I must admit that it came for me in a phase where I structured my life a bit better. You know, I was always a very lazy person in terms of sports. That changed also, let's say 1 year after, 1 year before the podcast. And with many things, I had to cut short. You know, I was living at my parents' house. I was somewhat in a loser situation, people might say. You know, like I started my master's, but I was still kind of in my old environment, in the comfort zone. You know. So I took it as a challenge, you know. I spent the nights actually doing a podcast. Under the week, I would not go out anymore. I watched YouTube videos, these kind of things, and focused on that. And that actually helped me now, because once you get out of your comfort zone, you have the discipline. And I see it now in Paris. I'm the last 5 months now in Paris, and I still managed to do it. And now it gives you the discipline also to then take other things serious. You know, the studies became better. The sports became as frequent as well. So I think once you accept this tough structure of a fixed day of release, it doesn't need to be every week. You can make it every second week or even every month. But if you agree on a specific day and don't question it and always pursue it, it can help to other sectors to transfer.
Yeah, I think that's another key, right? Having some sort of a discipline to actually, do this on a regular basis. So I think good point.
And if you release it, you give other people also the fragility of yourself, because they will see you. You know that there's a few hundred people who are waiting for it, and you are not delivering. You are not standing up to your promises. So I released sometimes one day delayed, to be honest. Never because of me, always because of interview guests. But I always felt this guilt, and I knew there was a few guys. I was, Freddie, huh? You're not gonna make it, huh? Look at you, yeah. So I always had this kind of pressure to myself.
Okay, I see. Interesting. On one more point, like, so do you think actually you started early or you started late on this? I'm actually not sure. I mean, I don't think there must be a lot of podcasts around Africa, for example. So
no, I think.
And is there any sort of some competitor, or are there other people who are working in a similar space?
Honestly, in that very form, no. I think there's a few good Instagram channels who are informing about Africa. They are getting people interested, But I think in terms of podcast, and that's the only medium I should think about, because the other ones can be just complementary. It can be good if there's some Instagram pages who are doing the job. No, I'm sad not, and this was the motivation. I was looking for that format. So I basically now just do what I want to hear myself the most, which makes it very easy for me also now to listen to my own episodes, because that's actually what I was waiting for. So I'm filling my own desire, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have a broader picture on how do you actually go about doing this podcast on Africa. But for a more at a more general level, I think maybe what would be key to understand is like top of your head, what are the top 3 things which you think is necessary or you should learn or pick up to actually get start creating your own content, like having a podcast, for example. I know I'm starting out, so it might help me as well. And essentially, basically, the idea is just to get some sort of pick your brains on this, because you've been doing this for a while, and hopefully this helps other people who might be interested to start something as well.
Absolutely. I would say, of course, first of all, do a few episodes and don't release them. So that would have been my initial advice to anyone who's uncertain. Start with 1 or 2 episodes, and then what I did, I told you a bit. I was already very deep in the podcast scene, so I had been joining other German podcasts, and I also had a few friends who are doing formats themselves. So I had 2 guys to whom I could show my tryout, my first episode, and then sort of verify it. So I had some but I had to choose carefully, because for example, my mother or many of my friends would have said, "What the fuck is going on? Who are you? What is this? Nobody wants to listen to this." Which is true, it's a niche format, but fuck it. If the content is good and if it's entertaining in a way, then it's good. So I choose 2 or 3 people that you actually value highly, and that they are doing also media content themselves. So they're creators, like you now also, and show it to them, see what they think. And even if they say it's good, still do another 2 or 3 episodes so that you can start with a chest. I could start and I knew the next 4 episodes are already done. I could just now focus on the future and
push out content later.
And just push it out. Don't think about it. And also don't look on the reach. The first 2 months maybe, or 3 months. I mean, also I was the same situation. I had like 30 followers, most of them my friends. Nothing was happening the first 2 months. Let's be honest. People don't dig it until at least 80 or 90 days. And sometimes even after.
Longer.
So don't look at any sort of reach. Do it if you want to do it. And of course, first verify it with the right people.
Yeah. So that's one. But also, how what do you think about the logistics around this? Like, having a podcast. I know we discussed like about 6 to 8 months back.
Yes.
In November. So it's 7 months back probably. We were discussing, and you said, it's very important to have a good mic and all that. So, what do you think? Like, I know it's probably you have it, but I don't. Even though I got
one mic. Amazon Basics, 40 euros, I think. So nothing fancy, of course, enough to have a quality higher than let's say Apple headset.
Yeah.
So that is important. I think also that somewhat of a design could be helpful, if you want to publish, have a logo, these kind of basic things. And
But it's just a one-man show, right? For you, Freddie? It's
yes,
just
yes, yes,
you.
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
I'm
your
thinking
design is
now.
there. I know all the designs for your videos that you're doing. You put it out. I've seen you actually do that as well when I was in Berlin.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But of course, the video is not existent, right? I'm thinking about it. You're inspiring me now to make a video format, maybe for the second season, at least
Yeah.
for some part of it. But no, you're right. The videos, I always have a certain structure of episode picture, but the videos are not existent. I just upload the audio file, so it's not like actually
I mean,
produce
it's a
something.
proper audio podcast, right? So
it's a straight audio podcast, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
But for me, I mean, I basically needed a push in a way. And I think with this whole virus situation, it's just easy to probably just get on Zoom and start building things on
And
there.
it's perfect, man. People are at home. How much better could you have an audience to reach out to? It's much nicer. People can listen now all the day, and people are available for interviews. So
But
I think
what I find
it's a very
interesting-
privileged situation for media creators.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if it's a privileged situation because, I mean, I don't think like the live events industry, I don't know how well would that survive eventually. Of course, if you're doing this online shows, it's paid, but then
Only for that, of course, you're right.
Yeah, most of the content creators are
art
not
and culture
actually,
scene.
Yeah. So most content creators are actually not just on the digital platform, right? They are mainly also doing live things as well. So yeah, for those people, it might be a struggle. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I had one more question. So apart from the logistics and doing all these things, you actually put up all your podcasts on all the different platforms. I've seen like about 10 platforms. How many platforms are there?
I mean, theoretically, infinitely. The important platform is Apple Podcast, because once you publish something on Apple Podcast, all of the other, let's say, apps, podcast apps, will copy their feed. So on Apple Podcast, you can be sure that now it's basically on all apps that you can download in the App Store, which have the name podcast. So that is done. Then, of course, Spotify, you need to set up yourself. And additional to that, I think, you don't really need.
Do you think that really helps? Because
yes, absolutely.
To have your content on all different platforms, it's more useful than just having it on one platform, for example.
I mean, in this regard, you have to get a hoster. There's many hostings out there you can subscribe to. I have a very basic one for €5 per month, but they do all that for you. You can, of course, do it yourself if you're the IT nerd. I'm sure Umar Asif could get involved there himself, but for us,
Umar, shout out to Umar,
for the front end guys, of course,
it's boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Pindi represents. But no, for the front end guys, it's much easier to just outsource that. And I upload the episode. What I need to do is YouTube, of course, myself. If I want to have something like SoundCloud, I would have to upload it there myself. But honestly, there's nobody getting in there. Like audio formats on YouTube are not really pushing forward. I have more episodes than followers on YouTube. So I think Spotify and Apple Podcast, if you can do it somehow automatically, then the rest will be settled.
Okay. And one more thing, like how so we addressed the logistics, how you actually go about putting this content on other platforms. What about the research part? Because the actual homework you have to do before coming up with your podcast, that must be quite a lot, right? Because for someone who's not from Africa to speak about Africa, you probably need to do a lot of research on each of these countries, each of their cultures, to actually talk about it.
That's true. It's true. It is true in the sense that it is more than like a format where you just talk. I mean, no offense against you now, but if this format of you picks up, there's not that much preparation each episode. Yeah, it's probably more conceptual preparation. But since you're not content based, you don't have to have a certain list of things you need to mention. It's more of a free conversation. And in my case, of course, I have a certain list. So it's basically the 4 topics I'm interested in. It's geography, history, politics and economy. So these are in every podcast existent. And indeed, I needed to dig in there, but this is something I did even before. So before the podcast, I was already watching YouTube documentaries on Somalia, Rwanda, all these different places, just for my own personal interest. Of course, not on such a professional level. So now I have a certain list of websites I check and I collect from. But I think in this case also it helped me a lot that it's an audio format. You can't show diagrams. You can't talk about numbers so much. You can't also tell deep historical happenings. You have to keep it a bit more on the surface. And my approach is always to get the people interested, to get them into the country, and then of course hopefully to give them also the reason to dig into it deeper themselves. So I can't take them there myself. I can just rise some interest.
Yeah, that's good enough, I think. So but is there something going back now, like would you think you would you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Honestly, it sounds very greedy, but I think that's also always a present topic, is commercialization. So how do you finance your podcast? I was ignorant about that for, let's say, a good 20-30 weeks. At least, no, let's not say ignorant. I always knew about it, but I never had the guts to say it, go out there, say, okay, this is a DIY format. Nobody's funding me. If you like the show, feel free to subscribe on this crowdfunding website or send me something via PayPal. Done. It's not like you have to beg for money. Just mention that every episode, and you will see that people who appreciate it, they get in there themselves, And I only started really to say that seriously, let's say maybe 10 or 12 weeks ago. Before that, I would mention it, somewhere inside the episode, somewhere at the very end. By the way, if it's no problem, support me. But honestly, you are doing the work for free. You are the one who's probably also having a job. You said already, I was studying, having a normal job. You need to have friends, etc. If it's sustainable on a long perspective, it has to be financed somehow. So I think don't be shy to say it. Of course, maybe don't say it in the first episode, but if you see that you want to do it, in our example, where anyone would do 4 episodes themselves or 3, and then release it, start with the 4th episode. Start when you do the first live episode. Say, guys, if you like it, here's the PayPal link, here's the subscription page for my crowdfunding, whatever. And don't be ashamed, it's the way to keep it sustainable. Otherwise, we don't take it seriously, I think.
Okay. No, that's quite, I haven't thought of that angle yet. I don't think, at least right now, I mean, I'm just starting out and I don't see any sort of financial constraint. And it's not like, it's just,
I mean,
for me, the idea is very simple. It's just for people to, learn from each other, feed from each other's ideas. It's very simple, I'm not trying to, maybe with the work that you're doing with Africa and also with empathy work, it was more at a more sort of a NGO level, like where we actually probably, using that money to, also help these communities in a way. So, I don't have that sort of requirement, but it's good to know.
Yeah, I think okay, maybe you're in the situation where it doesn't need to be, but once you do it on a regular basis, you'll realize that this is a lot of fucking work you're putting in there, man. And at the end of the day, you don't need to get paid by the same hour that you do at your work, which I think for you as an Alibaba distributor is quite good. But
you don't know what I do you?
No, I don't really know, but anyway. But I'm saying, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it, my friend. Don't ignore it. It will be there. Even if you do this, of course, once a month. And
it's not just for me anyway. So hopefully this reaches out to more people, and they get to know if they are trying to do something more interesting. Because for me, it's very basic. Just get people and talk.
Absolutely.
So it's nothing. I don't think I'm adding much value. Huh?
You can incentivize it. You can always try to give them extra content. Many people do that behind the paywall, for example, or you can send a newsletter once they subscribe to your crowdfunding page. There's many ways to make it worthwhile, not just get funding for that.
Correct. I think, I'm seeing a lot of content creators, sort of, say comics, like especially in India. I know they are struggling now because you see them. They are actually getting most of their money from doing live shows, live comedy shows, live music
Yes.
shows, this that, and they're actually struggling right now because obviously all of that is sort of gone for a toss.
Yeah,
So they
absolutely.
actually are making money through online live shows. So
Like
it's
Twitch
sorry.
and these kind of things? Oh, you mean like they stream and then they send
Yeah,
out
it's
like
live
a...
streaming and people just pay money, and then or they could actually,
Okay.
a lot of them have like featured events. So it's like a exclusive event where you actually pay money to go and watch them online. I actually attended a couple of I'm a big fan of an Indian podcast. It's called
Okay.
The Internet Said So. So I actually went in and paid money to actually go and see them online. That was
Hmm.
something. Yeah, it was a first for me. I've never seen them live anyway because they're in India, but it was a good experience to see how things go because they have like about 200 people online, and it's pretty high engagement because it's like Zoom and you can actually chat, and they will probably get you online as well, so you can have a face-to-face conversation. So it's great, like how people are making use of these different avenues currently.
Absolutely. Explore.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, that's my objective also,
Oh,
since we talked a few weeks ago that you wanted to do something with IGTV. I think it's a very intuitive format, and social media is also very important. So Zoom, IGTV, all these new tools, maybe we didn't discover in the past. Why not experience, why not try it out, explore?
okay. Yeah, yeah. So you know what? I'm gonna link all your channels up. I think
Yeah, by the way, don't get afraid. I know Ayan has a quite extensive English speaking audience. So most of my podcasts are in German,
yeah.
of course, but I think over 20 episodes have either a full English interview or are completely in English. You can see it directly once you scroll through the feed. Yeah, it's quite visible. And I think especially some of the interviews in English are very insightful, and I'm very grateful for them. So for everyone, there's something to find out.
What is the most coolest thing you learned about Africa or any one of those countries? Or
Um,
what like you made 55 episodes, right? So what is one thing
yes.
that you remember right now immediately? Like, wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, of course, it would be very arrogant to reduce it to one. What is very funny that comes up again is that in every single country you start by, and then the Portuguese came. So at some point, always the Portuguese with the ship came along, and this was the first interaction of European descent. So I mean, of course, every bordering country with the ocean, of course, only like not the inside parts, but everywhere you
Not the
basically
north
are
side
at
or
the
the north
water.
side. Yeah.
Yes, part of the history was, and then the Portuguese came, and yeah, European action
Yeah.
began.
What
So
about
that's
Spain? Spain probably also came about, right? Like,
Spain is not present. They focus on the big South America. They have this tiny piece of colony called Equatorial Guinea, but no, they have basically nothing
oh,
to say in
okay, okay.
Africa.
I didn't know that.
Some
I thought
part of Morocco still.
Spain has an influence on Morocco and
You're
that.
right. There's a little bit some enclaves until this day actually
Yeah,
in Morocco Spanish.
yeah,
You're right.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about it for the day. We'll probably wrap it up now.
Let's
So
do it.
thanks a
Sounds
lot
good.
for tuning in, man. I know you're really busy because you have an exam coming up in about 4 or 5 days. So thanks for
Yes,
making
yes. Don't worry. Don't worry.
time. Yeah, yeah, and I think we'll probably hear more from you later when we start,
Yes,
putting.
always, man. I'm always happy to talk. That's the prerequisite I think every show needs. You have to have a desire to talk to new people, talk about new topics. So I'm always happy to ditch in here. And one last question. I'm not sure if I got it at the beginning. What's the name of your format?
It's Akla Solo Ray. So it's actually a Bengali term. So I'm big on puns, right? So I'm always
Yes.
cracking up with puns. So the term is actually Akla Cholo Ray,
Okay.
which is part of a Bengali song, which means if no one comes along with you, you go on your own. So that's the song. But instead of cholo, I just replaced it with a solo. So the meaning still remains pretty much,
Ah,
although it's pretty contradictory because I'm a Liverpool fan and Liverpool fans are supposed to never walk alone. But
that's
yeah,
true. That's true.
that's basically this idea came to me like about 4 or 5 years back, and really liked the phrase. So yeah, I just kept it, and I don't really know if it really fits in well with this whole branding or the podcast,
Bro,
but it's just something
it's your
like,
own name. That's important. People will not find any other results when they Google it. You know, you are the one who's getting in there.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think I've never met someone equally interested in infantile puns as you do. So I'm very proud, of course, that you keep up the game. Yeah, it's never stopping. Very nice.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's basically, what are you drinking right there? This water or?
It's water. It's early in the morning, man. I have to get the day starting. No vodka, of course. The next format we do early in Singapore, late in Europe, and then I get drunk for you.
Yeah, we should do that. We should do that. Okay, so thanks, Freddie. Thanks for your time today. And that's it for today's first episode of Ekla Solo Ray. We'll get more people from next week, and you'll probably hear some more interesting perspective from people doing different things, creating their own different content. So yeah, we'll keep in touch. You guys.
Sounds good. Bramir Bani, Pani Lelo.
Yeah. Ciao. Choose.
Ciao, Max. See you soon.
See you. Bye.